Hey all, welcome to the vlog for Steven Universe, episodes 7 through 9. Another great crop of episodes this week. I continue to enjoy this show. It's very cute, very sweet, very fun. Having a good time with it. Definitely seeing what the appeal of it is to people. So, first up this week, episode 7, Bubble Buddies. This episode basically introduced Connie. I mean, she's been in the opening credits of every episode, and she's been kind of shown here and there. But this is, I think, the first episode where she spoke. She's just this little girl that Steven has a little bit of a precocious crush on. Which actually raises the question of how old Steven is supposed to be. Just based on the way he behaves and that kind of thing, I'm guessing like somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. So crush is kind of a strong word for a kid that age. It's more just, he's interested in her, he wants to be friends with her. He's a little shy around her. And so we get a cute little story where he saves her from a falling rock and creates a bubble with his gem, accidentally. And then they're both trapped in it. A lot of, and then it's just the two of them trapped in it, trying to find ways to break out, rolling the bubble around, stumbling on the monster that's causing the quakes that caused the falling rocks. And then Steven, with a bit of cleverness and some running, manages to defeat the monster. And through the whole thing, Connie, as long as Steven is continuing to insist that everything is fine, Connie gets increasingly annoyed with him. But then once she snaps at him about it and he reveals, what's really going on and why he's really trying to talk to her and so on and so forth, they get along much better, and she ends up, feeling that he did really well, and it was, he saved her, which he did. The main thing of interest here, besides, this rather cute little friendship that I'd like to see more of, I'd like to see more development on Connie. Kind of sad that she has no friends, until now with Steven, but it would be interesting to see, this very energetic, outgoing kid and exploring a friendship with what seems like a very introverted girl that's very obviously coded smart. We saw her reading a book and she has glasses on. In cartoon world, that means she's smart. And Steven is creative and energetic and imaginative, but I'm not sure smart in the traditional sense is a word that I would use for him. So, they make a pretty classic pair. So I'd definitely like to see more interactions between them. And, you've got, so there's that, there's also just kind of this reveals a little bit more, kind of solidifies when his gem works and why. Which seems to be, as I believe I've mentioned before, my speculation is that it's something to do with emotion. And I think what it's doing is it's, for lack of a better term, it's satisfying intense emotional needs. It's responding to feelings of love, basically. In a silly way in the first episode, his love for that ice cream mascot, but the other two times it's worked have involved his love for his mother and, again, this little kid precocious crush, but it's still like a connection to another person, a feeling of wanting to be around another person. At that age, friendship, same thing. But, it takes a while for the two to differentiate. But whichever one it is, it seems to be what triggers the gem. Which is why it's perfect that it produces shields. You know, it's about protecting the people he cares about. Caring is a good word for it. And it's really interesting that the one boy is the one who has that power. That's really a reversal. That he has the power that's based on caring and that is purely defensive. It's a cool reversal. I like it a lot, and it really fits well with the way the show works. Second episode was blanking on the title. Something Steven. Serious Steven? I think it was Serious Steven. Basically, they're going on a mission and they're bringing Steven along. And this one had a really interesting structure because it was an inversion of a structure you occasionally see where you'll see, you know, an episode will open in medias res, as this one does, like it's the middle of a scene of chaos and we don't know how it happened or why. And then what it'll do is it'll flash back and we'll see what caused it. And one structure that gets played with in regards to that is the initial flashback doesn't really answer the question. It just sets things up. And then as things go on, we get flashbacks to this event that, you know, we get a present-day story and a flashback story, and the two intertwine and explain one another. This does the exact opposite. Instead of flashing back after that opening scene, it flashes forwards. And instead of having relatively mundane events that trigger flashbacks to something much more serious and slowly reveal it, what we have instead is the opposite. The flashbacks are all to this very mundane thing involving basically him throwing up on the teacup ride. Yeah, it gets ridiculously over the top because this is Steven Universe and the whole ride falls apart and people end up in the ocean, but it's still the same basic thing. The kid got sick on the teacup ride. But this becomes the traumatic past event, well, that becomes the backstory that is flashed back to for the present-day adventure, which is this elaborate sequence in this complex temple, which I'm really looking forward to getting an answer of what the heck these temples are. We once again get a suggestion that there used to be a lot more gems, and they used to fight a lot, since this is a gem battlefield. I'm really curious as to who the gems were fighting as well, because there's no mention of who the other side was. It could have been gems versus monsters, who knows. But this temple is in the middle of a gem battlefield. It's a pretty cool concept. Basically, they pass out through doors and go through chambers full of death traps and puzzles and end up, despite going in a straight line, back in the room they were in. Which is a concept I love. It's a concept I'm absolutely addicted to. I used to have a recurring dream involving a room like that, which I talked about actually in my review of the 4th season premiere of My Little Pony. It kind of made sense there, trust me. And I realized not long ago that it all traces back to an episode of Star Trek Next Generation I watched when I was 6, where Silence Has Lease. Not actually a very good episode, but there's a haunting image for me of the Enterprise bridge warped so that passing out the door on the left causes you to re-enter it on the door from the right. You know, it works like the portals in Portal, which is a game I love for much the same reason. I just love this concept of bending space back on itself. And so, immediately, I enjoy it in this episode. Anyway, Steven figures out that what's actually happened is space isn't bending at all. The rooms are being spun, just like the teacups, which is beautiful. I love that kind of ridiculous analogy. You know, the Futurama Star Trek parody. Had great fun with that. And so, that was a really fun episode. We got to see Steven spend time with Garnet, which we so far have not seen much of. We've seen a lot of Pearl and Amethyst. excuse me, I feel like I'm starting to get to know their characters quite well. Garnet is a little more mysterious, but I think that's her character. She's a little bit distant. She's a little bit mysterious. In, like, traditional nuclear family terms, which, you know, fuck the traditional nuclear family. I mean, if you've got one, that's fine. If that's your family, sure, cool, whatever. But that's the point. Sure, cool, whatever. It doesn't have to be that. But, the gems do seem to map onto that pretty well. Amethyst is the traditional rambunctious big sister, and who, you know, most of the time is a companion in adventures, someone who'll get into trouble with you, but sometimes is a pain in the ass, sometimes picks on you. And Pearl is the traditional mom. The worrying one, the caretaking one, the one that makes schedules and keeps everyone in line and generally runs things. And Garnet is the distant, mysterious father figure who, you know, is the disciplinarian of last resort, but also capable of being really cool. And it's all very, you know, patriarchal traditional roles, which is why I like that they've all been replaced by women of roughly the same age. It's a shame we still kind of feel the need to have those roles. I can't think of any alternate ways to raise a kid, but it is neat that at least the roles are no longer tied to specific people. They're, you know, just these three characters who happen to fall into them. So, anyway, it was cool seeing him get to spend some time with her, get a little bit more of a feel for who she is in terms of how she relates to him, at least. I feel like we got even more of that in the next episode, Tiger Millionaire, which I think was my favorite of this bunch, which is kind of surprising because I am not a wrestling fan. I've just never gotten into it. I don't get it. I don't get what the appeal is. More power to you if you enjoy it, but as near as I can tell, it's a soap opera where people punch each other a lot. Which, I mean, nothing wrong with a soap opera. You can describe some of my favorite shows as soap operas with spaceships, or soap operas with time machines, or, you know, basically soap opera plus fantastical element describes a lot of my favorite shows. I just never got into the wrestling. But this was a fun episode. I really enjoyed the character of Tiger Millionaire and the fact that they were heels. I feel like wrestling episodes of shows usually don't make their main characters heels, which which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because near as I can tell, that's the characters that everybody actually likes, are the villains. I could be wrong about that. Again, not a wrestling fan, not really into the wrestling fandom, so I could be completely wrong, but the sense I get is that people generally find the villains to be more fun, as they do in most things. And for exactly the reason Amethyst says. Villains get to do whatever they want. It's only when the villainy becomes real, like when Tiger Millionaire hurt that one kid whose name I should know, but he's a kid with freaky pierced ears. God, those ears are freaky. They make me really uncomfortable. Just the piercings are way too big, and it looks like it hurts. Anyway, that kid. You know, when Steven is mean to him directly and personally, well, then it's not fun anymore for him, and he starts to hate Tiger Millionaire. And he even says, you know, something along the lines of, "It happened to me personally, now I hate him." But until that point, as Amethyst says, being a villain is great because you get to do whatever you want. Villains are fun that way. They upend the rules of normal society and get to be free and have fun, enjoy themselves in ways that aren't normally permitted by the rules. Which is what happens as Amethyst and Garnet enter the ring, and no, not Amethyst and Garnet, Pearl and Garnet enter the ring and are trying to impose the rules. And that destroys the entire game of wrestling. But then they become part of it. They embrace villainy and thereby freedom and fun. So, it's a fun little episode. And like I was saying, I feel like that one actually gives us even more insight into Garnet, because she's the one who suggests that they take up the villain role. So she has a bit more in common with Amethyst than is necessarily immediately obvious. You know, she's got a little bit of the big sister to her, the fun. And Pearl is willing to go along with it when Garnet approves of it, which is interesting. The dynamic among the three of them is interesting. It's definitely a family dynamic. It's a little less rigid than what I was describing from the previous episode, which is good. Good to have a bit of fluidity to that. And so yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this. So I'm actually gonna probably go and watch, I'm either gonna watch some right now or take a nap, and then watch some. We'll see what happens. To be continued.